Once again, we are causing it. So human consciousness frequency keeps rising and changing and transforming. And so we are causing this. So in a sense, we're responsible for what's going to come out of it. We're responsible, I would say co-creation wise, we're responsible for building whatever civilization. I used to always talk about exoconscious civilization. We're building an exoconscious civilization. That's what I would say. That's what we're doing. We're trying to put into this pieces like, what's communication going to look like? People have to dig in and become a scientist, like a citizen scientist. We have to understand what's going on and why it's going on. And when you become curious and you allow yourself, maybe you're not going to speak about these things, but maybe you're going to quietly, on your own time, in your own space.
Welcome. Let me briefly introduce our guest today, Rebecca Hardcastle Wright. I am so excited for this conversation. You'll find Rebecca's bio and links for everything that we talk about today in the show notes, and you can find that at catalysttalks.com. And remember, please share this show. There is so much good information that is coming to you. A short introduction. Rebecca is the foremost pioneer in exoconsciousness, having founded the Institute for Exoconsciousness, the first post-disclosure organization dedicated to fostering co-creation between natural humans and off-planet intelligence. She's the author of Exoconscious Humans. Will free will survive in an increasingly non-human world? Amazing book. Everybody get this book right now. Rebecca is dedicated to expanding our understanding of consciousness and fostering a harmonious relationships between humanity and extraterrestrial intelligences. For decades, she's been decoding the nuances of integration between human consciousness with extraterrestrial contact, influencing contemporary discourse on space exploration and human evolution. And this is what we're going to be diving into today, and why now it is so important to be super discerning of what you are focusing on. And I also want to presence, and we'll be diving into her organization, Institute for Exoconsciousness, and the planetary constitution that they have put forth into the world. And again, you can find that in the show notes. So before we drop in, I want to share one really beautiful excerpt, a review on your book, Rebecca, Exoconscious Humans, that's like, oh my God, this is where we're going today. So a little roadmap for you. If you could see into the future and saw imminent danger to all humans, what would you do? Futurist Rebecca Hardcastle Wright is one of those rare individuals who has the capacity to look into the crystal ball of hard empirical data and recognize the dangers looming in our collective future. Her startling recommendation is that we reject the coming singularity of transhumanism, which feeds upon the theft of our consciousness and independence. She proposes we adopt a radical new concept of what it means to be truly human or exoconscious before it's too late. Her book is an important and serious roadmap for the future conservation of our species. And this is why I've invited you here today, Rebecca. So,
Thank you. That was Nancy Duterte.
thank you for
Yeah.
that. All right. Well, what's top of your mind today? That's the first question I feel is going to open us up into the portal. What is top of mind for you right now?
Top of mind for me is a question that I posed myself last night before I went to sleep, because I'd been reading a lot of transhumanism, and so I'll just clarify what transhumanism is. Transhumanism is using artificial engineering, artificial electronics, to actually advance the human. So in other words, natural human consciousness, nature, connection to nature, that's been upended with transhumanism. And instead, there's the insertion of these different engineering platforms. So social engineering, that'd be when you go on Facebook or X or Twitter or whatever, plus the social engineering that happens through media. So it's sort of like I guess MK Ultra Mind Control 5.0. Like, it's just this subtle hearts and minds engineering that goes on. The second part of it is genetic engineering. So that would be CRISPR technology going in, changing your DNA. It could be mRNA vaccines, changing your DNA. All of that would be genetic engineering. And then there's geoengineering. So geoengineering is everything that comes from the skies. So chemtrails, HARP, um, all of the different radio frequencies that are happening, the uh, the toxins that are put in. It's called an artificial ionized an artificial atmospheric air ionization. So everything is becoming ionized so that we as humans become part of the internet, like we're the internet of bodies. That's how they're pulling it off. The internet of bodies is by ionizing the air
Do
and
you
ionizing us. Go
how
ahead.
does that work? How would that work? Ionizing the air. I mean, how does
It's,
that
it's
work to how does that work to connect
to,
our
to
human?
connect us, to make us. So it's to make us conductors.
Mm.
So there's copper in the chemtrails. There's barium, aluminum. So that's falling all down onto the earth. So that is to make humans become a conductor of
Mm.
electricity, a conductor of radio frequencies, a conductor of microwaves.
Okay. So for the listener who is like, oh my God, what did you just say? We're going to break this down a little bit. And the geoengineering, geo,
Right.
right? Like just the engineering aspect. I think that that might be, like, people are hearing these words, right? And it might not really be sinking in what this means. Um, Re-engineering the human body versus like the pure human, as Greg Braden would say,
Right.
or right, the exoconscious human. What what do you think it is that is forming this disconnect where people are like, oh, it's okay to engineer my body. It's okay. Whatever. These are all okay. Where's the disconnect?
Well, I really don't think it's one disconnect. So I'll just give you a good example of a disconnect. So my husband's a pilot. So we married late in life and blended our families. And um, it was so funny. It's like I was like, "Oh, there's a chemtrail." He goes, "No, that's a contrail. That's just natural. That's just, Then he would explain to me all about the vapor and all of this.
Hmm.
And then I don't know, about 5 years ago, he goes, "Oh no, those are chemtrails."
Mm.
Yeah, those aren't natural. And last night we were out for a walk and they were laying them down. And he goes, "Oh, I think that's a contrail." And he goes, "Oh no, that's a chemtrail."
Well, why would he say that? Well, for what for him changed his mind?
I think he just kept seeing it. I mean, if you don't know what to look for, or if you think that it's false, or it's something that you're not allowed to speak about,
Yeah.
which is, I think that's the disconnect. You'll be labeled a crazy lady. You'll be labeled radical.
Yeah.
Um, I just feel like right now, Stephanie, that especially since COVID, 2020, people have to dig in and become a scientist, like a citizen scientist. We have to understand what's going on
Yeah. Yeah.
and why it's going on. And so curiosity. So you asked me what's on my mind. So number one, curiosity. When you become curious and you allow yourself, maybe you're not going to speak about these things, but maybe you're going to quietly, on your own time, in your own space, just start to study these things. And that curiosity is what really breaks apart the system, the closed
Yep.
system. And so I was thinking, so I run Exoconscious coaching, and one of the core groups has been together for 3 years. So for 3 years, we've been just learning and growing, and we're all contactees, so we've all had extraterrestrial contact, but it's gone so far beyond that now as a trusted community. So we don't usually have a meeting, especially recently, that somebody doesn't bring up, "Oh my golly, I'm crashing my computer," or "I got a new computer and it will not work. And no matter what I do," and this guy's like a tech person, it's like, "It's not working." It's so I wrote down the question before I went to bed because I've been thinking about this this system of geoengineering, social engineering, genetic engineering, and how it's just such a tight, closed loop, and how curiosity is going to get us out of that. But also, what happens, what's going to happen in terms of engineering and this whole system that's been built when natural humans, when our frequency rises above the electronics and it doesn't work anymore?
Yeah, that's why I'm like, crypto? I don't know about that. That's all a pinhole,
That's
but
all. That's all the system.
right. When you're talking about being a citizen scientist, thinking about how what inspires or like activates me to question something or to want to look deeper, right? For me, it's the being a dot connector and knowing
Mhm.
what I know about the future and knowing what I know about my reality and our reality, and my contact and my connection with nature and with the interdimensional worlds. And when I so much of what I could feel it. And if and anyone might think I'm crazy, right? Anyone might think, oh, conspiracy or whatever that those labels are. It's literally like, so when the computer's crashing and there's just an inner knowing, because right? And then it's like, okay, I'm going to go and look. And so for folks who aren't really connected to that know because you know and that I really do think that that is where the inspiration to question comes from. And so that is at the core of what it means to be an exoconscious human. That's what I'm taking away from your
Mhm.
work, right?
Mhm.
So let's open up that door a little bit um and how, like, so there's like people who are tapped in and feel that connection to something's not right about this,
Mhm.
and that happens with me with so many things where, oh, this just happened today with something and I was like, not so much, and no one's going to get that just yet. So what do you feel like is that way? How do you see the way to sort of remind people, to catalyze people? I call it initiate, right?
Yeah.
To catalyze people to reactivate their connection.
Well, I think part of it is the whole idea of this doesn't feel right.
Mm,
So being a mom, raising kids, my kids had maybe, 7 vaccines, maybe. So I'm not an anti-vaxxer. But when I look at what my grandchildren and I look at their friends and I look at, like RFK talks about the chronic illness, you just know something's not, the allergies, the asthma,
hmm.
the whole gut biome issue. You look at the whole issue around the using the phones and the computers and just being in this microwaved environment, you know that something doesn't feel right there.
Yeah.
Something doesn't feel right. Something's not right. Like you're so in touch with nature. I love that. I'm, where'd all the birds go?
Yeah.
Where are all the birds?
Hmm.
And you have to follow that. You have to follow that breadcrumb. But I also believe that you have to be either in a trusted friendship circle or you need to be in a trusted community like the exoconscious community in order to ask these questions because you get labeled and you get isolated and you feel weird and um, you're not in the closed loop.
Yeah, I think that there's a core there. It's around belonging and depending on your profession, is it professional, like suicide for that word is there,
Yeah.
even though I'll just cancel, clear, delete that from the space. Though, is it like these really to speak your truth when it's like, oh my God, this is so
Yeah.
basic. So this comes down to the question of why. Why are we like seeing it and people seeing it, and then why is there like so much heart-centered openness and it's like not being seen? And I love how you speak on the topic of psionics. So I'd love for you to, this is a good, like, why, right? We want to know why. And I believe that's one of the reasons why. So can you take us into a portal, a deep dive of what is
Sure.
psionics and what's it doing?
So I'll just give a little background here. So
Yeah.
I've been in the field of extraterrestrial knowledge, disclosure for decades now. I mean, I'm a childhood experiencer, so it's always been part of my life. So even though it was part of my life, it was something that I wanted to find out about. Like, what happened to me? Was I MK Ultra'd? A
What
lot of
is that? What do
curiosity
you mean when
around
you
it.
say that? What does MK Ultra mean
Okay,
as a
so
verb?
MK Ultra were mind control programs that the CIA initiated, where there were a lot of children put into drug experiments. They were put into electro convulsive therapy in their brain. Uh, they they worked with children that were in hospitals, institutions, foster care, adoption. Really vulnerable children. There was a lot of drug experimentation that came out through it. Through MK Ultra. That MK Ultra really launched, I guess, the 60s drug era. That was
Mm,
launched by MK Ultra because they
mm,
wanted to find out how they brought in the LSD, they brought in the marijuana. All this has been really, really, historically recorded. Who did it? Who were the people involved? Why did they do it? And it was to get to move humans into a different bandwidth of brain. So we
really
had
interesting.
the 60s and the 70s of drugs, and then the 80s and 90s. It's kind of like sort of died down a little bit, I guess I would say. And then in the 2000s, the government started the brain initiative. So let's take apart the brain. I guess they didn't really find what they wanted with the drugs. And so then they said, well, so actually, George Bush was the one, uh, not HW, but the younger Bush. He started the Brain Initiative at the same time that the Genome Project started.
Oh, wow.
So he started both of those. And what happened was the Genome Project really worked really well. Craig Ventner and all of that. And then the brain initiative didn't work. They were going about it the wrong way. So they decided, well, let's go the brain initiative. And then Obama came in and he said, I'll do the Obama brain initiative, but I'm going to do it like we do with the Genome Project. So that's when they started taking apart all the synapses in the brain and mapping the brain. And that's what's AI today. So that's that AI and that whole transhuman is all brain centric.
Mm.
It's all a brain centric thing. So yeah, it's just interesting. The human consciousness and the human mind is a wonderful resource. Everybody wants it. They want to either control it or possess it or change it or
Mm. Yeah, and I mean, and you have an extensive like research background in everything that you're saying. You've extensively like evidence, and you're
yeah.
referring to documents when you talk about MK Ultra and these studies, and there's evidence of this. Hi everyone. Thank you so much for being here. Your attention means the world to me. If you're enjoying these episodes, please take a moment to share or subscribe. Click the button. There's a red button somewhere on this page. Subscribe, hit the bell for the notifications. Take a moment to review the show, comment on this episode. Your engagement, your attention means the world to us, and it really helps us spread these important messages and enables us to continue to put this amazing content out in the world. So thank you for being part of this conversation. Your attention means the world to me. And now, back to this episode.
Well, actually, MK Ultra, it sort of died out in the 70s with the church committee. The church committee came in and they said, we can't have this, and we can't be doing these awful experiments, and so they publicly shut it down. But I think it just went into other iterations.
Yeah.
But I think we were talking about why people don't want to question, why people want to stay silent. And I think it does involve sometimes professional fear. I think it involves family fear.
Mm-hmm.
If we've all been through COVID, so we all know that somebody disagreed with you with COVID, like all of a sudden, like they don't want to be your friend or your family. You're like, what's going on here? But so to backtrack a little bit, I think the biggest prize in terms of controlling human behavior came out of World War One. So World War One was really a chemical experiment in
Mm.
human behavior. So they had all these men trapped down in these trenches, mud, excrement, horrible bombing going on around them, plus
Mm.
chemical warfare came in the First World War. And so what came out of that was shell shock victims.
Mm.
And these shell shock victims were studied by a group called Tavistock in England. And they were really the forerunners of what, what influences human behavior, what makes us tick. And the thing that they came up with that they've never really made public, except only now is it really kind of coming out a little bit around the edges in social media, whatever, is John Bowlby brought forward what's called attachment theory. What makes
Mm.
people attach? Like,
Mm.
I want to attach to this political movement, or I want to
Mhm.
attach to this ET movement, or I want to attach to this, homeschool movement. What makes people want to attach?
Is it in the same concept of like attachment theory with
It's
parenting?
Yes, in parenting, yes. But for decades, that was never taught. So they
Mm.
knew had all this information about how humans attached and how really important the mother was. I mean, so I'm a mother, so I have my DNA in me, but I also have all of my biological children's DNA inside of me.
Mhm.
And they have my DNA inside of them, and we set up a resonance.
Mm.
And that's really the biological, spiritual, emotional. So my children were like little sponges until they were 3 or 4 years old and they had cognitive abilities. They were just little emotional sponges to whatever my emotions were, to however
Mhm.
much I loved them. And that was the basis of attachments. It's because we're mammals.
And so, first form of cutoff, but after birth and that whole scenario, is formula. Like you don't need to breastfeed.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Or you don't need to be home with your babies.
Mm.
You should have a career.
Let them cry.
Yeah,
Hmm.
let them cry. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And so
And
this,
trust
Mhm.
whatever the pediatrician had to say.
Which then they were feeding a program.
Mhm.
And so the source of this program, like when we started off here, this door, we went into the psionics door, and the source of this door, like this disconnect that you're talking about,
Mhm.
is what this motivation for controlling humans.
Yes, absolutely. That's bottom line. So back to the psionics. So language controls humans.
Yes.
Whether it's we're taking it out of the Kabbalah or the Bible or the Torah, I mean, the Hindu scriptures, they all have, vowels and, humming and this moves the human nervous system. Words
Hmm.
move the human nervous system. So what happened in 2017 is with the New York Times article was the CIA and the military came in and occupied disclosure,
Mm.
pure and simple. They moved in and they took over. They colonized.
Yeah.
And everybody, and they
Everything.
made promises that, well, if you follow our breadcrumbs, then, you'll get a New York Times bestseller and you'll get on all the podcasts and you'll get on the morning news shows and you'll get invited to all the conferences. And so everybody that I worked with in disclosure who'd been this independent thinkers, they all
Mm.
flopped.
Mm.
Almost to a person, they flopped. Almost to
And
a person,
and the
because they were also
purpose,
taught that they were going to be given insider knowledge.
from by the government.
Yeah.
And so the purpose of this government owning, like colonizing, taking over a narrative, creating a narrative,
Right.
was for what?
So that was when they began to to thread the threat narrative. So ETs are going to attack us. That was the
Mm.
whole basis of the New York Times article. They're going to be a threat. So, and that was just, I mean, let's face it, that was to pump up the military budget. Let's get some more
Mm,
money in here.
mhm,
The ETs are going to attack us. The Germans are going to attack us. The Russians are going to attack us. Now the ETs are going to attack us. So what happened was they changed the language. So we
mm.
used to talk about UFOs. Now we have to talk about UAP.
All these acronyms, it's ridiculous. It's
Yeah.
this whole
We used to talk
super.
about extraterrestrials, multidimensional, spiritual beings. And I just want your audience to know that for exoconscious humans, we believe that humans, regular humans, have the innate ability to connect, communicate, and co-create with extraterrestrials, multidimensionals, and spiritual beings. So there's a lot of
Mhm.
people in our group that really come in through that spiritual portal of connecting with spiritual beings. And then all of a sudden, you couldn't use that language. You had to say NHI.
Yeah, what's that?
Like, what's NHI? Well, it's non-human intelligence. But so once again, change the language, change the direction. So everything is like almost like sanitized, like UAP, NHI. It's like it's a sanitizing language. So then what happened was just recently,
Oh,
they're
wait,
headed to the
NHI and NHINIH.
I
In,
know, I
in,
know.
okay.
Yeah, it's all the same system. Like it's the same system.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, it's a spell. It's like, language is a spell.
It
But
is. I mean, well,
yeah,
so psionics, I always confuse the two of these words, and it's like there's a reason, but cymatics, the
yeah,
science, right? Cymatics is frequency into shape.
yeah,
Shape is form,
yeah.
right? So it's all yes.
So they took the whole field of paranormal and psychic abilities, like
Hmm.
ESP, telekinesis, whatever. They took that whole field of paranormal psychic
Hmm.
abilities that we
Hmm.
still call psychic abilities,
Yep.
and they called it psionics.
Mm.
And so, what psionics, it actually came, that was really my first Substack on that psionics series. It came from the 50s. This poor man, he was a science fiction writer named um, John Carpenter. He just had a wicked childhood. Just, I mean, when you read the Substack, it's like, oh, poor guy. Talk about attachment problems. So, he
Mm.
was really the first to use the word psionics. So, what psionics means is applying electronics and engineering to paranormal abilities,
Mm.
which feeds into transhumanism. So if you don't have electronic, genetic type of extensions, then you're not going to be paranormal. You're not going to have psychic abilities. It's digital consciousness, digital intelligence. So it's a digitalized transhuman world.
Mm. And when you talk about psionics, we're also talking about words, right? And the sort of manipulation of words it's all feeding everything into this computerized transhuman
Yes.
agenda, right? So I actually loved that you spoke to the word VUCA, the
Yeah.
right, because that is being used. I actually used that years ago in my kind of
Yeah.
corporate leadership coaching situation, and
Oh, cool.
it's a big, well, it's not that cool, right? I mean,
No,
yes,
but it's
we
cool
have.
that you were using it, that you have identified it.
I mean, we had, yeah, I mean, it's a very big, especially in the corporate sustainability world and the risk management and all of that. In that, it was very much used in that space to identify the volatile,
Mm-hmm.
uncertain, chaotic, ambiguous
Mm-hmm.
world, and it's the cool thing to say, but what is it really?
It's control.
Bring us
It's
one
artificially overlaid on human life.
the actual volatility, the
Yeah.
actual uncertainty.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm. So because it disconnects us from it, it says, oh, it's this thing over there. It's uncertain. We don't know about it. And as deeply spiritual connected people, our innate ability, our innate intelligence, this is how we thrive in uncertainty. This is
Mm-hmm.
a normal, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like And so how has this kind of program of control been intentionally used to manipulate our ability to be comfortable or be able to discern in our uncertainty? You know, it's like really cut us off. Anything fear, keep us in fear of that so that we choose this. Yeah.
Well, I would say they were pretty smart putting all this together, but because if you think about it, if you disrupt the natural attachment of mother-child, for
Yeah.
example, and that nervous system then is disrupted and chaotic,
Mm,
then that person is going to try to grasp for something.
mm,
So that whole it came out of the Frankfurt School. They called it the authoritarian personality. What makes people want to go to experts? What makes people want to attach to experts? And so they figured out how you could take a person who was kind of challenged in terms of attachment that hadn't really had enough lifespan because, as you know, and I know, it takes time. If you have attachment issues, it takes time. It takes life to get that to sort of settle down into health, I
yeah.
would say, health and
Mhm,
happiness. And
mhm,
if you don't have time to do that, and then you shove an authoritarian personality, an expert in front of you, that's why COVID was so successful, was because all of these every day, all day long, the doctors, the politicians, the researchers, the people with, 5 degrees behind their name, they were the experts. And if you have an attachment issue, then you're going to go right to that expert and want to live through them and want to live through the
mm,
knowledge that they give you, unquestioning.
mm,
It's just unquestioning because you're a human. You need to be emotionally connected to something.
mm,
And which is a good thing, which is a beautiful thing, but it can be misused.
mm. Yeah. So you talk about it through the bait and switch lens. When you reference bait and switch in this context, what are you referring to?
Well, it's so if you look back to the First World War, I mean, that's been decades. They've been working on this for decades. So it went First World War, it went Tavistock Institute, it went Macy conferences. The Macy conferences were held here in America, and they were massively important because they established cybernetics. So
Mm,
cybernetics is kind of like the computer, the ones and the zeros. It's a closed system. You never get beyond the ones and zeros. You're going to be in a closed system, which is authoritarian.
mm,
And then it went from that to, other systems beyond that. But that was all about human behavior. All of that historical record that I just ran through in 2 seconds, that was all about controlling human behavior.
And so for those somebody who says, yeah, they were just researching so that we can be protected, for our best good.
Well,
Sounds
there's a
innocent, right?
difference between manipulation and liberation.
Yeah.
And
And
every individual has to decide that for themselves. Was I manipulated or was I liberated? And
mhm.
I'm not here to tell you how to make your choice. I know how I made my choice.
Yeah, I think this is a great time for me to ask. You were mentioning something about Legos before and where we're going to be in 2050. And I'll say, um, you know, there's this before we drop into that, I want to speak to just the energy of confusion. The energy of confusion, which I know is a strategy here. The energy of confusion, which I find myself in a lot. I'm like, how,
Mhm.
huh? Again, it's like and it is so interesting because it also, I'm pretty articulate. I love words. I'm a wordsmith, and sometimes I cannot even find the words to explain what I'm seeing, the dissonance of what I'm seeing around how is it that you don't see this? Like for me, I have a background as an environment, a forest activist and activist, and then went into law and environmental justice and that whole path. And also my mission is awakening consciousness, and it's through all the various means. It's through coaching. It's the evolution of humanity and in our highest potential, because I see that 2050, I see 100 years from now. It's awesome. And there's an option. We are at a choice point. We are so at a choice point right now. And when this moment where in this choice point, I think about any time we've ever been in a moment of choice, the amount of confusion and it is like is going to influence us. It's going to influence a decision. And so when I look at people who used to think what I thought, like how did our minds and our what we see in the world look so different? And around climate, we're talking about climate and even the sustainability agenda. I mean, I wrote in law school, I was writing law review articles around, sustainable development and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, what happened? Where are we?
Yeah.
I can't even explain it.
Well, I'd say in terms of the sustainability, I don't, do you know Elena Freeland?
No.
Do you follow her work?
Mm-mm.
Here's her recent book. Oh, no, this is her. I
Oh,
have a recent book. I'm
geoengineered.
reading. Yeah, how the environment has been weaponized by chemicals, electromagnetism, nanotechnology, and synthetic biology.
Okay.
Woman is brilliant. And it's all, I mean, it's just footnoted. It's footnote after footnote after footnote.
Mm.
So what she does is she takes the government programmings of geoengineering and she dissects them with footnotes, with their own research and their own footnotes,
Okay. That's great.
which
Cool.
is amazing. So I guess I feel like we can't really talk about sustainability and climate unless we could talk about geoengineering.
Yeah.
We have to understand that, which was not always true. That was not always true, but now it is.
When would you say the turn happened? Because I agree with you. And I was like, did I just not get it this whole time?
Well, I once again, I think it was a gradual build of a system. I think, you look at HARP in Alaska, everybody's like, oh, HARP shut down. HARP didn't shut down. I think there's like, I don't know, 50 HARP installations around the world now.
And HARP is directed energy weapons?
No, HARP is that goes up in the ionosphere and changes the ionosphere.
Oh, 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 oh.
CERN is, and then there's
Oh.
CERN. I mean, CERN
Mm,
hasn't been around all that long, maybe 2000, maybe a little before. I
yeah.
think I think HARP was, beaming the ionosphere. Well, I'll take that back. That can be used for directed energy weapons. Um, but then, so HARP, CERN, chemtrails, this GWIN system that's so they can actually guide the chemtrails across America with these GWIN systems.
Wow.
It's all, and then satellites are all part of it also.
Yeah.
So
Blanketing.
that wasn't always true, but it's true now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think there's at this choice point. I want to also make sure that we bring in and presence the alternative. Like, what would it even look like? Because I think most people just think that this is it, and there's nothing we could do about it. I sometimes look at the sky and I see the stars where I live, and it's beautiful, and sometimes I see satellites and noise and light everywhere, and
Yeah.
I feel like I'm suffocating. Imagine the trees, imagine
Yeah.
um other animals. So, and yeah, like there is an alternative to this, and how do we see that? Hey everyone, it's me, Stephanie. I wanted to pause this episode and just check in and see how you're doing. We're living through some crazy times right now. We got crazy, oh my God, intense, and we also have amazing. It's a really potent time of evolution. And if you're on that spiritual path, new gifts are coming online. We're being brought to our knees. We are navigating, we are ready to release all of the old programs and patterns. And what I see as we navigate this liminal moment is that our inner worlds can easily mimic the existential uncertainties and chaos in our outer world. We're all navigating some form of an identity shift, and so many people are seeking clarity. So, whether you are the clarity seeker and you're ready to activate whatever the next level is for you, the next thing is for you, or you are the soul seeker and you are ready to evolve, fully evolve, and connect to your deeper, authentic power and your unique medicine, or whether you're the pathfinder and it is go time, you're the business mission builder right now, and it is about putting your gifts and talents into the world, from the messaging, all the pieces of that, and who you get to be in that journey, or whether you are the wayfinder and you're ready to expand. You're the visionary leader ready to expand and bring in our new earth. You know, the wayfinders are the bows of the ship. They see in the dark, the navigators, the seers, the intuitives. So whether any of these resonate for you, whether you're seeking clarity and ready to activate, whether you're the soul seeker and ready to evolve, whether you're the pathfinder and ready to emerge, or whether you are the wayfinder and you know it is time to expand, I invite you to a one-on-one inquiry session with me to explore working together. I have been coaching visionary leaders and entrepreneurs, next gen investors, decades, for 3 decades now. And it is a absolute honor to hold the sacred space for people to expand and evolve into their higher becoming. So if this is resonating with you at all and you are interested in having this free inquiry session with me, if you're seriously, really serious about exploring working together, then there is a link on this page for you to click, and you can also go to rippleyouриmpact.com and we will have a call very soon. Thank you for taking the time, and now let's return to this episode.
Well, I think one of the solutions, so we're a decentralized community. So the exoconscious humans are a decentralized community.
Mm-hmm.
So, like I said, we may not be in sync with the electronic and the magnetic environment that's being placed on us. We may not be in sync with it.
In sync, meaning like be like amenable to it.
Right. It may not work for us.
Mm-hmm.
That's a solution. I think RFK is trying to take apart the whole vaccine system, genetic engineering system. That's a tough one. But then again, I live in Arizona, so I live around a large Mormon community. I mean, a lot of those Mormon mothers were like, I'm not vaccinating my kids until they're like 18 months old or 20 months old or whatever. No way. They just decided they weren't going to do it. Not all of them, but and the whole thing with food. I mean, you just have to be strong. You have to get a backbone.
Yeah.
You have to get a backbone and just say, this is how I'm raising my family. This is, I consider, our kids are older now, but my husband and I, we're a family, and, like, we decide what we eat. We decide if there's too many chemtrails out there, I'm not going to go outside. I stay in the house usually.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a choice in all this. Sometimes when I look at, like you said, the 2050, so that's 25 years. So our grandbabies that are being born now, what's going to happen to them in 25 years? That's a generation. That's going to be a generation. I think 25 years is a generation. So, are they going to be, is it going to be this total brain to computer interface? That was part of the rollout of the vax with Charles Lieber at Harvard. I mean, he had all the patents on brain to computer interface. And is this going to just be increased? Is this going to be something that my grandchildren are going to have? This whole genetic engineering, it's kind of like, well, we'll have all these pharmacological issues that children are having from so many drugs and vaxes and everything. And then, autism is like what 1 in 35 now. Well, we'll fix that. We'll just, intranasal, we'll go up there and change DNA. So it's like causing problems and then making money solving them. That's a closed system. That's cybernetics.
Problem solution, problem solution,
Problem solution, problem solution. Yeah.
Yeah.
Digital consciousness. I mean, I don't know. This whole mapping of the human brain, that wasn't done to map the human brain. That was a military operation in part. So we have to realize that what we're living in terms of transhumanism was a military operation. But I really believe, so there's a a word called technocracy.
Hmm.
So that started in the 30s. Technocracy is a financial system, it's an economic system. And I think the bankers were behind a lot of this
Hmm.
because the military is always kind of the tip of the spear. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like they get
Yeah.
told what to do by larger entities. So to blame the military for any of this, like you're really losing the big picture when you do that. I think it's a lot bigger than that. But I think
Hmm.
it's going to take decentralized communities, blockchains, whatever you want to call them, trusted small communities, you people like you and me hooking up. I think that decentralized communities of curious people that want to do the work,
Yeah.
I think that's the solution. I
And
mean, look at the healers coming forth. I mean, it's just
yeah, I mean, that's the key word, right? It's doing the work. I think it's connecting. I created one of like the 40 modalities I've created in my lifetime. It was called the inner work of impact about 10 years ago. And it was really saying, look, we're not, the inner work is what clears the perceptual fog.
Mhm.
So we can see beyond this tiny bandwidth of perception, which is what you said was around the mapping the brain. What did you say before? The brain, what'd you call
Brain
it?
to computer.
The bandwidth of brain.
Right.
Bandwidth of brain. It's like, well, yeah, the bandwidth of where they're
Yeah,
like,
what about this whole field out here?
yeah. And so anytime we're so squished into this is the reality here, it's questionable. And once it takes the inner work to release all it's, and people, do you want to do the work or not? It doesn't have to take 10 years in therapy like it used to. We
No.
have so much more knowledge,
Mhm.
and the energies on the earth are so supporting our rapid evolution right now.
Mhm.
And I
Yes.
think one of the things that was coming to mind when you were just talking about how to actually connect the dots and how to see and make and like get how does this feel? This doesn't feel right. It's subtle energy. It's a very subtle energy until it's not, but it begins as a subtle energy, like a hmm.
A
And see,
nuance.
yeah, like a sense, and being able to
Mhm.
discern that, listen and trust yourself, right? And that word trust is really I think a key
Well,
word.
that goes back to the attachment. What's
Mm,
someone with an attachment wound, trust is always a huge issue for them. So they go
yeah.
into fear and avoidance, or they go into some kind of crazy control need.
Mm. And how do you see what do you propose as a like a like an accelerated way to transmute that in
I
somebody?
think what you're saying, I totally agree with you. I mean, I'm all about inner work. It's got to be done with the inner work, but ironically, it has to be done through your inner work, being quiet and scheduling that into your life. Like
Yeah.
has to be a big part of your life. Just the quiet or, go to yoga or meditate, whatever you do. But not only that, but be in your body. I mean, there's so much going on that people are just popping out of their body left and right
Hmm. Yeah.
and just orienting your body. But at the same time, having an expansive mind that will go into the cosmos because that's part of our DNA. That's part of our soul journey. That's the
Mm,
planetary constitution. That's part of our DNA evolution.
mm. Yeah. So and that is knowing yourself,
Yes.
because when you know yourself, you know what's real and what else there is.
Mhm.
So take us on a journey of the planetary constitution. What was your intention? Why this come about? What is it? And where's it going?
Well, we
You
started
got
the
all
planet.
excited. Got all
Yeah,
excited.
started the planetary constitution. I called a friend and I'm like, I really feel like that this was during the election. And I said, I really feel like the exoconscious community really has something to say to these different candidates in the election and what's happening. And so we sort of we kind of talked about things and then um, the government CIA group UAP task force stepped in and congressional hearings and that sort of thing. And everything was just coalescing around that. And so we just stopped. There were like four of us. with Susan, Nancy Duterte, and Linda Martouche. So Nancy and Linda are both remote viewers, and you know the work that Susan does with it's geomagnetics of the Earth and the natural evolution of humans. And so we just kind of dropped it. I'm like, we're not getting where we need to go. We're not saying what we need to say. And we were doing this long, you know how the process is. And so I'm sitting in a parking lot. I'm going in to pick up something at a store. And I called Nancy Duterte on the phone and I'm like, we're going the wrong way. And so I worked with Edgar Mitchell and for like 6 years in Washington, D.C. I said, Edgar Mitchell keeps coming in and like pressing me, like pressing me. I said, I don't think Congress is the way to go. I don't think they have the bandwidth that we need to be focusing on because they're so into whatever these military CIA intel people are bringing them. I don't think our voice will be heard. And I'm like, I don't know where to go with that. So maybe if judiciary is not going to work, congressional is not going to work. What if we went executive? And then Edgar is like I said, Edgar's been coming into me like, what's going on here? I said, I just feel like, and all of a sudden I said to Nancy, I said, who runs NASA? And I'm like on my phone, and it's like, oh, it's the executive branch. Let's go executive branch. And then we just got together, and this was all during the elections. So we didn't know who the president was going to be. And we just decided that uh, like Linda Martouche came up with really good ideas, and I wrote things up, and Susan wrote things up, and then Nancy, who's an attorney, she coalesced it all into the planetary constitution, and it's really a bill of human rights in
Yeah.
space.
I'll just say that it starts with we the people of planet
Yes.
Earth. Can you, for people who don't know who Edgar Mitchell is, who's that?
Oh, so he was Apollo 14 astronaut.
Okay. So he knows a little bit about
Yeah, so we were
perspective.
working, yeah, so we were working on in DC on 0 point energy. So unified field, kind of
Mhm.
zero point energy, consciousness, because he was really big, saw the Ions Institute in California and was really, so always been in consciousness. And then the extraterrestrial presence. So
Mm.
yeah, there's some backstory to that. We had some interesting times together. He was actually in Florida. I was in Washington, D.C. I was kind of the lead person in Washington, D.C. for him. So we got an appointment with John Podesta to come in. John Podesta was Barack Obama's general counsel. And
Mhm.
that was 2014. And he agreed to meet with us the week of August 11th. He said, sure, I'll meet with you. Boy, that's an esoteric 8-11. Eights and 11s. So anyway, Edgar had been to Switzerland and he had been he was not doing well. He subsequently passed away, but he couldn't, there's no way he could travel to DC. And so we had to cancel it. So I didn't really think
Mm.
anything about the meeting. It just kind of didn't work out. I went on and did work with the Institute for Exoconsciousness after that. After I finished working with his organization. And then 2016, I'm in bed, and a friend of mine from Canada calls me up. He goes, get out of bed. He goes, all of your emails to John Podesta are in WikiLeaks. So everything got published in WikiLeaks. That was kind of a
That's
disclosure.
right. That's good.
Yeah.
Get it out. The preamble, we the people of planet Earth, in order to form a more perfect interplanetary global union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide common defense. I mean, there's this, it's so beautiful to read. And how would you explain what this is for somebody and why it is?
Well, I think it's a declaration of
Mhm.
natural human consciousness
Yeah.
that we are, I kind of like I've been thinking, sort of mulling with the word, like we're sort of spiritual pilgrims. Or
Mhm.
spiritual pilgrims in space, like Canterbury Tales. You know Canterbury Tales?
Yeah.
It's kind of like that. Like this is really not just about robotics and rockets and missiles and propulsion systems. This is really about a soul contract that
Mm.
humans have with the cosmos.
Yeah.
And it's an ethical, moral responsibility. And that's really what the whole planetary constitution is framed around. That we have a right to be natural humans, that we have a right to be protected from this neural invasion that's happening, that's genetic invasion that's happening, that we have a right to be protected from that
Mm,
and to go into space. I mean, let's face it. I mean, extraterrestrials, they're interested in natural humans. They're
yeah.
not interested in robots. They
Mm,
can make better robots. They're
yeah.
not interested in us being robots.
Yeah. Have you thought about the United States Space Force?
Yeah,
They're in the Department of Defense.
right, right. Yeah.
Um,
So we have, it's true that you can share since you share links, like we have on our on our Exoconscious Humans YouTube, we have a reading where all the people that were involved in it read it. It's so fun. Come
mm,
read each section of it. Um, yeah. So I want to be careful here because I have a lot of respect for the military. I think the military has a job. The military
yeah.
has a job to defend us.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like being safe. It's like being safe in your home.
Yeah.
Okay. Um,
There's kindness and there's consciousness and there's 3D
reality of,
reality.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I also am very respectful of what intelligence does. I think intelligence has a place. It's always
Yeah.
going to be here.
Hmm.
You know, the church, let's face it. I mean, the Catholic Church was intel for years. You know, I go to confession and then the priest tells, you know, the ruler,
Mm,
whatever, because, you know, they need money. I think that was kind of shown in the whole, I don't know if you followed the whole thing. Well, I live in Phoenix, but the whole thing with the immigration. Catholic
mm,
Church was so involved in immigration. And then when the funds were cut, they said they're shutting down all the refugee programs. So this wasn't really a church program, this is a government program.
mm,
So the church and state have always been, you know, and I can say that because was part of the church. I've had a career in the church. Um, yeah, so
mm.
yeah, I think that that part of our DNA is cosmic.
Yeah. Yeah. We know because we know because we know, and then
Mhm,
there's science to back this up, whether or not it is accepted in certain scientific communities. There is science that there are shifts happening on the planet right now. There is
mhm,
an enormous amount of energy, and this is like Susan's work with geomagnetic
mhm.
storms and the shifting energy of the sun. And there's just so it's coming from so many places. And we as natural humans have the ability to sense. This is that subtle sense to sense something's different. I mean, I think that everyone is sensing something's different, and market crashing is a great way to distract us from that, because that's what everyone is focusing on, and noticing when we are focused on anything that is generating fear, uncertainty, volatility, right?
Mhm.
That it completely disconnects us from our path. And I mean, it happens. It's individually on an individual level. I think of how many times I feel disconnected when I'm in a tizzy, right? And so, just on this collective level of distraction and fear, it is such a great way to distract us from this most powerful time of our upgrades, of our connection, right? Of this communication that's available to everybody.
That
So,
actually happened during the Reformation. So if you look back at Martin Luther and the Reformation,
uh-huh.
so Martin Luther came out and said that priesthood of all believers. So you didn't really need a priest. You're a believer. You're a priest. And that
Mm.
was radical,
What year was
radical,
that?
radical.
When was that?
I think that was the 1400s.
Okay. That's a lot.
And that's
Yeah.
when Gutenberg printing press came out at the same time. So all of a sudden, you know, humans could read books and read the
Hmm.
Bible for themselves. They didn't need the priest to read it. So, you know, you were looking at this radical, radical shift of, and that, you know, the Catholic Church at that point was taking, you know, money from people and buying people were buying their way into heaven and all of that, and these massive massive land holdings. So in Germany you had the Reformation, and what happened was, you know, Martin Luther came out and said, priesthood of all believers, you possess this within yourself. You're a priest.
Mm.
You don't need to pay the church money to go to heaven. You're a priest. And simultaneous with that, you had a massive banking disruption, grabbing the church's land, tearing down the churches, the Catholic churches, and just total confusion. This whole feudal order kind of got upended at that point, kind of like what we're going through now.
Mm-hmm.
And it's almost like, kind of a chicken and the egg. Did Martin Luther saying priesthood of all believers cause this, or
Mm,
was this an outgrowth of it? I kind of think that human consciousness, that
yeah.
when we upgrade, we have to take responsibility for the fact that we are going to cause chaos.
Yeah. I feel like that's for me, my subtle sense is that is exactly what is going on
Yeah.
right now. It's not that causing that. It's we're
Yeah.
causing this. This is the
You're
time.
causing this.
A-
Yeah.
And it's also I look at the trajectory of our sort of evolution through the like that identity when we're in the program and we're being programmed, we are it's happening to us, and this is that
Yes.
old mentality, right? Scarcity, fear, all that stuff. And then we're like purpose. Oh my gosh, now this is where we're the heart centered. We're this heart centered creator,
Hmm.
and this is where all this value signaling is coming in. And for me, this is where that confusion vortex is.
Hmm.
And it's like, wait, program. And so yeah, oh yes, I know my purpose now. And so now it's like the purpose and the identity are now like Legos locked in, right?
Hmm.
And then there's this the what is the option? The third door is we are quantum creators.
Hmm.
It's higher purpose. It's a place. It's not like my purpose. It's that place or frequency that we get to be
Yeah,
in, right? That is where
absolutely.
it happens through us. And that
And
is
we
where
don't know yet what that frequency, where kind of all the Lego pieces are going to fall, kind of like
Mhm.
the question that you asked me, to like, what are you thinking about right now? Thinking about what happens when natural human frequency
Mm.
can't use the electronics. I don't know what that's going to look like, but I'm ready to go there.
Well, what do you what do you I'm ready to go there too. What do you mean? Just break that down a little bit by when our frequency, like why wouldn't it be able to? I know you explained this before a little bit, but why wouldn't our frequency allow us to use it? It would just like trip the system because it'd be
We trick the
so
system. Yeah.
incoherent.
My system doesn't work for us. Or or we can work in the system, but we know it's artificial.
Yeah, well that's
Kind of know it for what it is.
yeah.
But also the system right now electronically, what happens when a certain number of people on the face of the earth no longer can go to chat GPT because they can't get on their computer because it doesn't work for them?
Yeah. Yeah, I've been wondering this. Yeah.
I don't know what that's going to look like, but that's going to happen. I know in my core being but once again, we are causing it. So
Hmm.
human consciousness frequency keeps rising and changing and transforming. And so we are causing this. So in a sense, we're responsible for what's going to come out of it. We're
Mm.
responsible, I would say, co-creation wise, we're responsible for building whatever civilization. I used to always talk about exoconscious civilization. We're
Hmm.
building an exoconscious civilization. That's what I would say. That's what we're doing. We're trying to put into this pieces like, what's communication going to look like?
Yeah. Yeah. And this is what we call the new earth, right? It's
Yes,
like
yes.
this is the new earth, grounding what it looks like. I agree
Mhm.
with you. It is a time of really visioning that. And
It's like we have a Lego. We have a
yeah.
Lego that we have to be responsible for. Like, where
Mhm.
where are we going to take this? That's why I
Mm.
think the whole cosmic DNA piece
Yeah.
is going to come into play. I don't know how, I don't know what it's going to look like, but
Mm. Amazing. Yes, the cosmic DNA. I will order that, please. Sign me up.
no, you have that. You have that.
We
You don't have
have
to
that.
worry about it. That's part of our evolutionary blueprint. I mean, really,
Yeah.
whatever we as a consciousness community or exoconscious community are creating right now, we're just acting out of our evolutionary cosmic blueprint. This is what
Yeah.
we're supposed to do. Do we know how to do it? Probably not. It's like the planetary constitution. You're going to have a lot of talks about it, and you're going to like close it down for a while and then open it back up again and not really know what you're doing, but that's all okay.
Yeah.
That's not a more, it's more than okay. It's good. It's a good thing
Yeah.
because it's our evolutionary blueprint. And do we
Yeah.
need, I don't know, Elon Musk or Space Force to get us there? Maybe. They have
Mhm.
their role.
You might have to take a pill under your tongue to get on the plane though. So, yeah. And I think it's beautiful. And I think something I'm taking away from this conversation is really that, like a seed, like planting the seed that we are creating our future and we can choose. And things like the planetary constitution and your work around, there's this part of like knowing the truth, revealing the truth, asking, and like, yes, is it, I don't know, all unicorns and rainbows. I'm going to only focus on what I want to create instead. Yes. And it's really important to
Yeah.
know and discern and be mindful. And I always kind of teeter on like walking the path of the conscious language, the vocabulary of increase, I call it. What are we increasing? How are we using our words? Every word has a frequency and a ripple in the field. And also, how do we hold that duality of that and like being really mindful of we are vulnerable and we are part, I am in the matrix. I am part of this system and
Yeah.
there's parts that are great and amazing. And I am also going to be super mindful and discerning in it. What am I eating? Well,
Yes.
I don't have to do any, I can choose.
Critical thinking.
Yes. Yeah. Critical thinking. What'd you say? Fluid, flexible minds.
Yeah.
You have so many, there's so many nuggets. Everybody has to read this book, Exoconscious Humans. It's such, I love your work. Thank you for
Oh, thank
being
you.
a steadfast
Yeah, yeah, it's wonderful
speaker.
to meet.
I know, I know. Finally.
Yeah, it's
Um,
wonderful to meet and have time to talk.
Yeah, and share it with everybody else.
Yeah.
So, your attention means the world to me. Thank you so much for listening. If you've enjoyed this episode, I have one ask. Please head over to our YouTube channel and subscribe. Give us a thumbs up and comment on the episode. You can also find all of the podcast platforms and show notes at catalysttalks.com. And again, please subscribe and review. It really helps us out. And remember, there is so much more happening in the invisible. So be true to you. Thank you.